Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Planning and Development Committee for July 13th, 2015. And we do have a quorum. Could we have a motion to approve the minutes of June 8th?
So moved. Second.
Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions? Not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on, Alderman Wilson, will you take P1?
What? It's just in microscopic print. Here we go. P1 is Ordinance 84-015, granting a special use for a craft brewery, Sketchbook Brewing Company, at 821A through 821B Chicago Avenue, and the Zoning Board of Appeals and City staff have recommended adoption of the ordinance.
Okay. It's been moved and second. All right, we have one speaker for this item, Nikki Hiltwine.
Thank you. I'll read as fast as I can. 4 months after their grand opening in November, Sketchbook started getting signatures on a petition announcing that they were filing a special use application and stated this change of zoning would allow us to increase wholesale production for sale to restaurants and bars and to hold private birthday parties and nonprofit fundraisers. The wording of the petition sounded innocuous enough, but in actuality, a special use would nullify the memorandum of understanding that is in place, as well as all aspects of their operations that were contained in their original business plan that enabled them to open as a permitted use in their alley location in the first place. This was going to be a major change. On October 15th, they submitted a special use application for a permit to be both a craft brewery and a banquet hall in their current space with alley-only access. They later withdrew this application. The opportunity then arose for them to take over the 821 Chicago Avenue storefront that was being rented by their friends at Brew Camp. They submitted their new craft brewery special use permit application on May 22nd for the storefront and the brewery space in the back building. Alderman Nguyen and I met with the brewers that day and heard about their plans. It was wonderful to hear that all retail operations and public access to events, tours, classes, parties, etc. would take place in the storefront, and there would be no access to the storefront from the alley. Moving all the customers and guests and their cars out of the alley was good news indeed, because illegal parking has been an ongoing problem. We also discussed a topic that I felt needed to be addressed during the special use process, odors from the brewery. I told them that strong brewery odors made me cough and asked if a longer exhaust pipe might solve the problem. Sean Decker said that he thought it would help because the vapor would condensate and run back down the pipe before it reached the top. He said it would be expensive, but that they would run the pipe, which currently ends above the first floor windows, up the wall to above the roof line at the second floor. I asked why they didn't put in a longer pipe in the first place. He replied that the city did not require them to. He sounded confident that the longer pipe would work, but not totally so. I sent them an email before the DAPR meeting letting them know that without the longer pipe already in place, I had no way of knowing whether or not it would effectively prevent the brewing odors from escaping into the air. And without knowing that, I could not support an increase in their production level. I let them know this with the hope that they would come to the meeting with information about the efficacy of a longer pipe. Instead, they came with emissions reports from which they calculated that a parked car emits more volatile organic compounds than a small brewery does in the production of 1,000 barrels of beer. For the record, odors from parked cars do not affect me in any way. Wanting to know what the city had said about odors and venting, I read through all of the minutes of all of the meetings that were held last year involving the amendment to the zoning ordinance to establish the definition and land use regulations for microbreweries, which was later changed to craft breweries. Craft breweries were going to be brand new special uses in the B, C, D, and RP zoning districts. But the only discussion that I could find regarding odors was one comment made by a member of the zoning committee of the Plan Commission at their May 21st meeting. The minutes say Chairman Scher pointed out that microbreweries could also have negative effects associated with odors and fumes, but acknowledged that fire prevention and health department inspect such facilities regularly. That's all there was. It appears that no other discussion was had by any board, commission, or committee about possible odors produced by a brewery or any venting requirements. My neighbor, Paige Riggs, is still away on vacation. There is a copy of her letter to the ZBA in your packet. Paige has asthma and has had to use her rescue inhaler after inhaling brewery odors. Alice George of Sketchbook told me that she has asthma and is not bothered at all by the same brewery smells. The fact of the matter is that people with asthma do not all have the same triggers. So yes, these two people with asthma can encounter the same stimuli and not have the same respiratory response. At the meeting with the brewers where we discussed odors, Alderman Nguyen, and please correct me if I am misremembering what you said, stated that the smell of wine gives her a migraine. This reaction to an odor is not experienced by all people who smell wine, but this doesn't make her personal physical reaction any less real. I don't have asthma, no odors give me headaches, but like perfume, which I absolutely cannot tolerate at all, some brewing odors are so strong that they stick in my throat and make me cough for an extended period of time. Perhaps it has to do with the hops. I don't know if any of you experience anything like this. I only know that this has been my personal reaction to some of the brewery odors, and when a strong wind blows from northwest, the odors can blow across the alley and into my windows. For this reason, I am particularly concerned with the large increase in the frequency of brewing sessions that would result from the much higher production level cap that the special use would allow. Sketchbook stated that the realities of time and space would not allow them to reach the 7,500 barrel limit, but how much can they produce? I confirmed with zoning administrator Latinovic today that Sketchbook would not need any permission to add more brewing equipment to their brewing space, nor would they need permission to repurpose the room currently identified as their storage room on their plans. This room could also be filled with brewing equipment. Pronouncing those wrong. The only things they can't do without permission is brew more than 7,500 barrels of beer or expand into any other areas of the building. So the reality of the situation is that we really have no idea what Sketchbook's maximum production capabilities are now or what they will be in the future. Increasing their brewing equipment will allow them to brew more often. Odors are produced every time they brew. Could they brew 7 days a week? Could they brew twice a day? I don't know.
Can you begin to wrap up?
I'm at the end. I spent some time online and discovered that last November, Oak Park approved their first special use permit for their first craft brewery. This brewery is starting with a limited 500 barrel production for the first year and moving up to a 5-year maximum production of 2,000 barrels. In the minutes of the Oak Park Plan Commission, it states the applicant said they would reduce odor from the brewing process by using a condensation process that would condense the steam to water, and they would also use an air filtration system to remove the smell from the steam. I don't know if Oak Park required these systems or if the brewery opted to install them. So a longer exhaust pipe is not the only option. There are vapor condensers and carbon filtration system, and who knows what else. Sketchbook will be the first craft brewery located outside the industrial district. More may follow. I believe that there should be a way for the city to promote economic development, support and encourage the growth of small business enterprises, and make provisions to protect the quality of life for neighbors as well. Rather than just requiring Sketchbook to install a longer exhaust pipe, I would like to suggest that the city take an interest in the matter of brewery odors and investigate venting, length of exhaust pipes, vapor condensers, air filtration systems, and any other options that are available in order to determine which would be most effective for breweries in the new special use zoning districts that are in very close proximity to residential neighbors. If the unexpected cost of this equipment is too much for Sketchbook to afford at this time, perhaps the city has funds available for a low-interest loan or could provide some other financial aid to help cover the expense. Thank you. I'm not going to get into it, but Condition D of the special use ordinance, nuisance odors, where the applicants can decide who the majority of neighbors are. I have a real problem with that, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Seeing no lights, it has been moved and second. Alderman Nguyen.
I'd like to see, Madam Chair, if someone from Sketchbook Brewery might want to respond.
Is someone here?
Yes, the owners
Oh,
are
okay.
here.
So I'm Sean Decker, one of the co-owners of Sketchbook Brewing.
I'm Caesar Marin.
So one of the things I would bring up is that we have worked with Ms. Hiltwein on a number of different issues and with Alderman Nguyen over the course of the 9 months that we've now been in operation. We've been in operation since last October. Up until the point where we actually applied for our craft brewery special use application, to that point, there had been no complaints from Ms. Hiltwein or anyone else regarding odors. These complaints suddenly started once we made this application. So we've had a history of actually operating and brewing on a regular basis in the neighborhood without a single complaint for 9 months. I checked with the city. There haven't been complaints to the city. There haven't been complaints directed at us. So we've had, I know, one meeting with Alderman Nguyen and Ms. Hiltwein a while back, probably it was about 3 or 4 months ago, when we were talking. And in fact, I forget who brought it up, whether it was us or it was Alderman Nguyen, but the question of odors came up. And in fact, Ms. Hiltwein specifically said that she didn't have any problem with our odors, that wasn't the thing she was concerned about. It was the parking and the alley access were the really points of concern for her. So I'm not quite understanding where the sudden odor problem has come from. During our zoning application meeting, we had a number of neighbors come forward, many of whom were actually much closer to this exhaust pipe than Ms. Hiltwein is, who's down across the alley, and several down, and they were there in support of our brewery and basically saying that, in fact, there were no specific odors that they'd ever smelled. I believe specifically they said they had actually smelled us brewing one time. This would be one time out of probably about 100 brews that we had done over the last 9 months, and that it wasn't a problematic smell at all.
I just want to add one thing. When we started, before we had our brewing equipment, the larger brew equipment we have today, we had our pilot system that's about 20 times smaller, if you will. I'm just picking a number here. It's much smaller. And we were brewing twice a day, if not twice a day, every day of the week, to be able to open for our members in September, or October, actually, when we had our first member pick up their growlers. And so definitely our neighbor has experienced us brewing every day of the week. Just to, most of you have heard already, but if you haven't, the brewing process takes anywhere from 6 to 8 hours. 1.5 of those hours is boiling. That's when all those volatiles, the steam comes out. That's about it during the process.
Alderman Grover, and then Alderman Nguyen.
I think this is the first I've heard of an issue of odors coming from brewing beer, much less complaints about it. You said it's just the boiling of the hops that produces the...
So, yeah, so
it's just one part of the process?
it's one part of the process, exactly, yeah. So there are many different compounds that may come out of the entire process on this literature that we reference. It's in the packet, actually. That was done by the EPA in, I believe, 2008. The boil kettle is where you get most of your volatile compounds. It's basically like boiling a big pot of pasta. You're going to fill up your room with steam. Well, obviously, whatever flavor is in there, you're going to get some of that aroma. If you're boiling pasta versus shrimp or something like that, or seafood, you're going to get much more different flavors. So what you get there is grains and hops. Some of those compounds will come out depending on your recipe, but it can go anywhere from smelling like a bakery to maybe a little more slightly sulfuric. Yeah.
But no suggestion that these are hazardous, volatile,
Absolutely
anything,
not.
or that
They're
the
not.
EPA regulates emissions of breweries or...
Yeah, the
process?
literature that was referred to, that was also in your packet, or was in the zoning packet, was a study done by the EPA where they looked at breweries per 1,000 barrels that they did, and the amount of emissions of harmful, byproducts was so small that literally a car sitting on the street, the gasoline evaporating is going to actually emit more harmful things, because everything in there is basically food. It's organic, and there really aren't any harmful compounds.
And you do intend to extend the pipe?
Yes, we do. We intend to
Regardless,
extend the
so we
pipe
just don't know what's
above the
gonna-
roof line.
Right,
Yes.
okay. Well, let's just hope that that does alleviate the irritants that Ms. Hiltwein has encountered with
Absolutely.
your process, and that would address it, so.
And also throughout this process, we've met with the neighbors, and we've been trying to as much as we can to be a good neighbor to everyone else in that area. We will continue to do exactly that. We will continue to be sensitive to issues such as odors, and make whatever adoptions we can to kind of deal with this.
Do you change your recipes? If you brew every day, do you have the same recipe every day, or do you?
No, they're
make
all
it-
different. Yeah, well, we have
Oh,
we have
maybe
a set of-
that's the change in odors. I'm just wondering. Alderman Nguyen and then Alderman Fisk.
Yes, I have 2 questions to ask. As Alderman Grover already asked, you're extending the vent that the steam goes up. And what's the length of the extension how tall is the vent now, and then how much taller will it be?
The vent is about 3 feet tall right now, so it goes right outside of the glass block window and
Right.
then up. And now it's going to go basically right above the roof line of the building, which I want to say it's about 15 to 18 feet, perhaps.
So you're extending it by approximately 12 feet?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And you have explained to me and to others in these meetings that then you capture the condensation that comes down through the vent, correct?
That's correct. So inside of the brewery, the vent that goes up captures the condensate right there. So out of a brew day, we end up boiling about 10 gallons or so of liquid, of water, and we capture about 7 to 8 of that, if not more, inside of the brewery itself. That's where any of those volatiles are, and then the rest would capture outside.
Right. And so you're capturing that now with about a 3-foot long vent. And
Right.
do you do you have a sense of how much more you will capture when you extend the vent to 12 feet, by 12 more feet?
We're
Do you
definitely
expect-
going to capture a lot more. It really depends on the day, the differential pressure between inside and outside, how warm or cold it is outside. It's very much simpler than a restaurant that's in the area as well. So we have Campagnola, we have Lucky Platter, we have a couple other restaurants equidistant from the neighborhood, basically, and so any of the smells that are going out there right now, ours is definitely less than that.
All right. So I appreciate that the extent that you're willing to extend the vent, because I think that's really important, and I think that will go a long way to alleviating this issue, because it's the steam that carries the odor. And so if the steam becomes condensate in that vent, then it's not escaping. But I also appreciate the fact that you're willing to continue to work with the community, and I think that's a very valid point. I am very glad that you have a retail location on Chicago Avenue. I think it's going to go a long way towards expanding your business even further from what it is now. The other question I wanted to ask you about is, with this expansion in your ability to brew, you don't plan to brew 7 days a week, correct?
Correct.
And why is that you're not planning to brew 7 days a week?
Sanity is the first one.
Okay, that's fine. I appreciate that. But isn't it also capacity, that you don't have the capacity to contain all of the beer that you would brew? if you
Yes,
brewed?
yes. So we have space issues in the entire building. Actually, even if we were to take the entire building, it doesn't. You can't occupy. You can't. Do the same thing as Revolution Brewery, for example, does in the space that we have. The 7,500 barrel number comes from the fact that we are distributors, and we can self-distribute up to 7,500. So it's not just an arbitrary number.
Okay.
Often the limits and the bottlenecks to how much you would be able to produce is not necessarily how often you brew. It's actually how much cold storage you have. So, for instance, all of this beer has to be kegged and put into cold storage, which takes a lot of space. And so, given the limited space of the coolers that we have, there's only so much we can brew. So.
Okay. Then the other point I wanted to make is, if you change the amount that you brew, that changes your federal license, correct?
The license, the federal and the state license allows us to brew. Basically, there's two Illinois state of Illinois licenses now. One up to 60,000 barrels, one
Okay.
between 60 and 120,000. So we're not even scratching any of that.
Okay. That's all I have right now.
Alderman Fisk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was if you were planning on brewing 7 days a week, but you don't have plans to do that right now? Are you doing 5 days or 6 days?
We can definitely do 5-6 days a week, yes.
Okay.
We have done 5 or 6 days a week.
Okay, I'd like to give the neighbors a respite from this. I mean, even though what you're spewing is not toxic, smells can be very irritating to some people, and they can develop a sensitivity to them, and it really impacts their quality of life. So if you, in your talks with Alderman Nguyen, if you can work with the neighbors to limit that, I would say especially on weekends, and be sensitive to that, that will go a long way toward, I think, developing good relationships with the neighbors.
The other piece of information that we shared at the ZBA meeting is that during the duration of the brew day, about an hour and a half is boiling. If we were to brew twice that day, it would be 2 boils close together. That would be 2 to 3 hours at max. That happens usually. You can't tell exactly when it happens, but it's not late at night. It's not early in the morning. So most people are out of their homes. And I like to again bring the comparison of restaurants that do cook and emit exhaust 7 days a week. So when
And that's a big concern. I have restaurants, and it's part of the special use process, what they're cooking, how close they are to neighbors. So I understand that neighbors have legitimate concerns about the odors.
One of the other things you might add is that one of the big brewery businesses is tours, and you give a lot of tours, and on tour days you do not want to be actively brewing because you're going to bring people into that space, and most of those tours will happen on weekends. That's obviously the time that people want to come and visit, so it's a fairly natural thing that for many reasons we actually wouldn't really want to brew on weekends. So
Okay, thanks.
Seeing no other lights, this is for introduction. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right. Alderman Nguyen, would you take P2?
Item P2, Ordinance 78015, zoning ordinance text amendment regarding minor variations for second-floor additions to non-conforming structures. The Plan Commission and staff recommend adoption of Ordinance 79015, a zoning ordinance text amendment to allow variation requests for all second-floor additions to existing non-conforming single-family and two-family residential structures to be processed as a minor variation. I move introduction.
Is there a second? Okay. Seeing no lights, Alderman Wilson?
I might have missed the meeting where it came up. So where did this come from, I guess, how did this evolve?
Okay, I'm going to ask Director Munze if he would respond.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This was an aldermanic reference from Alderman Miller, who had a conversation with ZBA members about caseload and these particular types of variations that can swell their schedule, and were practically almost always approved because they are covering an existing addition. They're all legal non-conforming setbacks. And aesthetically and structurally wise, it makes sense to permit these additions. There's also still public comment. There's still notification that is sent out so that the neighbors are aware that this is being planned.
All right, I just hesitate a little bit because we've had a lot of conversations about property that's getting, built bigger and bigger and bigger, and affordability of the housing stock and things of that nature. So it causes me some pause to reduce the vetting process. So that's why I was interested to know. All right, it's just for introduction, right?
Right.
Okay, that's all, thanks.
Seeing no other lights, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Alderman Fisk, will you take P3?
It's ordinance 80-015, Plan Development Extension for Church Street Village, 1629 to 1691 Church Street. The city staff recommends adoption of ordinance 80-015 to extend the time for completion of the Church Street Village Plan Development originally approved in April 2006. The ordinance grants the approval to obtain a building permit to construct the final 8-unit building within 1 year. It's Building 1.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seeing no lights, Alderman Brathwaite, did you want to make a comment?
Very quickly, Madam Chair. Peter Braithwaite, Alderman, 2nd Ward, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I just wanted to, this is just for introduction, but I did wanted to take a moment, and we have both the developers are here today to give a quick little update on Church Street Village. We've been, ever since I've been on council, we've discussed this property and some of the complications with the property, and I'm just here to say that these developers came in and they did an excellent job. I met with them several weeks ago at the site. I had an opportunity to see the improvements. Just a reminder, during the turn of the economy, there were a number of units over at that location that were left unfinished. The situation with the owners of the condominium is that there was no condo association. They were behind on their condo fees. And in the last couple of weeks, I'm here to report that through the developers, they've paid up, and they now have a very active condo association. Also, through the developers, they've done $100,000 of site repairs along the properties to improve it. And I'm really confident to say that I think they'll do an excellent job if you grant them this this extension, and they'll speak to this if you want. One of the things they're also looking to do with the improvement or with the site is possible affordable rentals, and so that's something that we've discussed over the past couple of months. And with that, I will introduce them if you have any additional questions.
You want to make a comment?
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm Steve Spinell, principal with Kinsey Real Estate Group. We've had the opportunity to work with a private equity firm that purchased that note out of foreclosure. And the nice thing is there were 14 units that were finished or not completed at various stages, from just framing to some of the mechanicals to drywall. And we put together a program for them to demonstrate to not only is it good for the community, but it's also better for them on the return on their investment. So where we finished the 14 townhomes, we've sold 9 that have closed in that property, ranging from $320,000 to $387,000. So our average sales price has been over $350,000. By doing that, it's incumbent for them to make sure that the homeowners association is very strong. So they came back, as the Alderman mentioned, we went ahead and brought up all of the HOA fees current, and also $100,000 plus in site improvements that the prior developer, obviously left behind that were unfinished, without having to do a special assessment to the other people that have made their commitment and financial commitment to that project. So we feel very fortunate that things have moved along pretty well. We have 4 more units to sell, and our petition today is to not only ask for an extension, but we also believe that the buildings that are out there are very nice. They're tall, okay, and what we want to do is come back in front of you to give us some time to modify the architecture to make it look more pedestrian friendly. I've shown some pictures and renderings to the alderman of what our thoughts are, and I think it'll blend in nicer along the Church Street corridor versus putting 3-story just brick square box up there. So, and we look forward to working with your staff to get through that process. Any questions?
Alderman Grover.
I think you've just answered my question. The 8 remaining units of Building 1 are the ones that would front Church Street.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the last missing piece of the puzzle.
That's the last missing piece of the puzzle. Yeah.
And there are 8 units in that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Alderman Nguyen?
Will the architecture look similar to the architecture of the townhouses that are already there?
No, they won't look similar. They'll look a lot more, it'll look more pedestrian friendly. It'll look a little bit more residential in nature. There'll be gables and there'll be a combination of brick and either stucco or hardy siding and different types of materials to make it more friendly and not so, those other buildings are like 3 stories high of just strictly brick. And I think as you drive down Church Street, we'll be able to come to some type of understanding with the group as to what'll look a little bit more friendly as you're traveling down Church Street.
Do you anticipate they won't be as tall, or you'll?
They'll still be 3-story structures.
Right.
They'll be still be 3-story structures, and there's some amenities that we're going to make those a little bit different. They'll be a little bit smaller in size. They'll have a deck off the back side of the property as well. So I think everyone will be satisfied with what we're trying to do there.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, I wish you all the luck in the world. I think it's a great project. And just for the city of Evanston, we're very lucky because over time, recently, many of these stalled projects have been reborn, and they're being built now, and they're being finished, and it's just a great thing. Not every community has that, but not every community is the most livable city. And hopefully you will promote all of our awards in your marketing.
There you go.
Are you familiar that we've been getting first place here, first place there?
I will be tomorrow for sure.
Yeah.
But our company, before the tsunami hit in the real estate market, we were doing development, and then we focused on this reworking and repurposing and finishing of projects. And we've done very little here with you guys, but we're open to helping that process. So if there's other opportunities within the different wards that you may have, we're definitely here, and we have relationship with private equity firms and different financial institutions that we work with in order to.
This is a project that needs completing.
Right.
Really, it's in a very prominent space and needs to be fixed.
Thank you.
And you can see the difference in the streetscape or landscaping as you drive down Church Street now. So it looks very nice.
Thank you.
It really does. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other lights, it's been moved in second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. That concludes our agenda. Is there a motion for adjournment? We are adjourned, and we.